Okay, so I want to start with the news out of Lebanon as our entry point to this idea of Bitcoin as a savings technology. Now, over the weekend, the deputy PM said that the state and the central bank had gone bankrupt. That fact is being disputed by the central bank governor. But at the end of the day, this is a country that for 3 years, for multiple years, has been, the banking sector has been suffering. And you've seen the currency plummet by 90%, more than. And so a lot of people are losing their life savings. And, Meltem, you've talked about this idea of Bitcoin as an antidote to chaos. And I guess I just want to start with the broad question of how does Bitcoin fix this?
Yeah, look, I think I'll start by saying Bitcoin's not a panacea to all of the world's problems. Like, a lot of the issues we have in our world with money are systemic in nature, and they involve not just technology and like the underlying philosophy and fundamentals of how we manage sovereign issued currencies, but there are a variety of issues. And you don't even have to go to Lebanon or Ukraine or Cyprus to see this. My family's Turkish. My parents are from Turkey. I have a lot of family members in Turkey. Right now, inflation in Turkey is rampant, and people can no longer afford the lifestyle they had 6 months ago, 12 months ago, due to the rapid debasement of currency. So this is impacting people, in parts of the world that maybe most of us aren't from or haven't been to, but it's also coming to the United States. If you look at what's happening to inflation in this country, I think very quickly people are starting to recognize these things we've read about in history books around hyperinflation and monetary debasement. They're no longer just ideas, it's actually happening here. And so I think what's interesting about Bitcoin, Munib and I met, 8 years ago at this point, when Stacks was Namecoin and we're in a totally different place. But even back then, the big thing we were talking about is what Bitcoin does is you can't inflate Bitcoin. You can't print more Bitcoin. There's no central entity that's in charge of Bitcoin, even though in the year 2022, people are still fucking trying. So hello, Chris Larson, who is now trying to exert control over Bitcoin's source code. We've done this many times. The beautiful thing about Bitcoin is Bitcoin's issuance is set in stone. The protocol has been functioning for the last 13 years without downtime, without interruption. And so I think what's fantastic and what Stacks is doing, what many other projects are trying to emulate, but I think are going to be challenged to emulate, is Bitcoin has this beautiful element where no one single entity can control it, change the code, or force changes upon the user base, the holder base. And I think in a world like the one we live in today, where we see the politics of influence have shifted dramatically, it's no longer just nation states on the geopolitical stage, it's also corporation states. There are a number of American corporations and foreign corporations who are now larger than G20 economies in terms of market cap and their annual revenue. Meta, aka Facebook, has over 3 billion daily active users, so over half of the planet's population is using a software product issued and coded by them on a daily basis. So we have corporation states, and now we have these decentralized digital states in the form of Bitcoin. And so I think it's incredibly exciting to see what's happening on the political stage with Bitcoin, with nation states adopting it, but also individuals pushing it forward. There are 300 million Bitcoiners around the world. We need to up those numbers, not number go up, but number of users and number of holders go up. And we'll see in this year's midterm election here in the United States how Bitcoin is going to dramatically alter the political landscape as well. Because I don't know about you, who's voting for pro-Bitcoin candidates? Fuck yeah, let's do that. Let's put Bitcoiners in office and let's focus on shifting policy to make Bitcoin a core component of how we think about innovation and preserving innovation here in the United States, but also abroad.
Are you running for office?
I'm not running. No.
So many fantastic talking points.
No, I'm not running for office. I live in New Hampshire. I am on the governor's crypto commission, and my neighbor Bruce Fenton is running for Senate. He's challenging Maggie Hassan for her Senate seat, so I will be voting for him. But I'm not interested in politics. I'm interested in Bitcoin and driving Bitcoin forward. So I think I'm better served doing that from where I sit now.
If you have your savings stored in fiat currency, he thinks it will suffer. And this is what you both are talking about. Meltem, you've made the point that this is the first time that we've seen Bitcoin in an inflationary environment, which has been illuminating. And a lot of what you do is look at these data over longer time horizons. And I wonder whether we can talk a bit more about this dynamic of Bitcoin and savings and the role of inflation like in the last 2 years and where we go from here.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and I'll just sort of bring this back to what's going on in the Stacks ecosystem as well, in Bitcoin more broadly. So if we think about where Bitcoin started, when I started working in the Bitcoin industry in 2015, we were still at the point where people were accumulating Bitcoin, and Bitcoin was primarily viewed as an asset and an investment. And so the entire narrative around Bitcoin was always, oh, it's going to go up X%, look at how much its value has appreciated. I think with the introduction in 2017 of and smart contracts, and then in 2018 and 2019, the beginnings of the DeFi or decentralized finance ecosystem on top of Ethereum, what we started to see is people looking at Bitcoin, which we have to remember at that point, Bitcoin dominance historically was around 70%. So 70% of the overall market cap of cryptocurrencies was Bitcoin. And people started looking at this massive pile of Bitcoin collateral that wasn't being utilized. Bitcoin is an incredible form of collateral because it's highly liquid. There's deep liquid markets, meaning that you can liquidate Bitcoin very quickly. And because Bitcoin settles with finality, you have these settlement guarantees around the capital that you're taking as a collateral for loans. And so what we started to do was take Bitcoin and make it compatible with Ethereum through this process of wrapping it and bridging it over to Ethereum. Does anyone know how much of Bitcoin's supply is on the Ethereum network today as wrapped Bitcoin?
1%.
Good guess. What do you think?
I think it's 1 or slightly below 1%.
It's 2% actually, so fun statistic. But 95% is fully custodial. So 95% of the methods that we have to wrap that Bitcoin is fully custodial, meaning we didn't actually remove this issue we have in traditional credit structures where you have a financial intermediary that controls that collateral and can do all sorts of funny things with that collateral, like rehypothecate it, et cetera, which has caused so many of the challenges we see in traditional credit markets. And so one of the interesting things to observe has been the emergence of BitFi, or what I'm calling Bitcoin DeFi. I don't know if we've officially agreed on that term, but I think BitFi is a good one. I don't know. If anyone has ideas, we can workshop it later. But I think this emerging idea of Bitcoin native DeFi is picking up a lot of steam. And again, I think the challenge for all of us in this room and what I want us to think about as we build this BitFi ecosystem is how do we ensure that the way we're making Bitcoin compatible with DeFi is non-custodial, doesn't create the same vulnerabilities and the same challenges with intermediaries that we've seen traditionally, and continues to remain true to sort of the ethos of Bitcoin. I do think a lot of times in DeFi and what's happening just in Web3 generally, we're taking a lot of shortcuts. We're making compromises with security and decentralization to deliver speed, efficiency, and low cost, and that doesn't work. And we've seen that. There have been over $1 billion of hacks in the last 3 months alone in L2s and bridges. So I think it's very important for us to continue to sort of think about security and decentralization as core principles. That's the whole thing that makes Bitcoin really attractive, and I think we've sacrificed a lot of that in order to bring capital efficiency into DeFi or sort of decentralized finance markets, and that doesn't work. But ultimately, what's so cool to me about Bitcoin, like from the first time I started learning about Bitcoin, still today, 10 years later, what's so cool about Bitcoin, to the point you were making, Manib, is you don't need permission. It doesn't matter where in the world you live. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you believe in. Like today, we have so much identity politicking. We have so much redlining. We have people trying to censor and police each other's thoughts, and that's not what Bitcoin's about. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be a dog on the internet. If you have an internet connection and you have the willingness and ability to learn, you can get into Bitcoin. You can accumulate Bitcoin. You don't even have to buy it. There are multiple ways for you to earn Bitcoin doing stuff you already do online, which is super cool. And then once you have a little bit of Bitcoin, you can do a bunch of really interesting stuff with it. You can get a loan against it. You can use it as collateral. You can go to Arcadeco and you can take out a self-paying loan, which is such a cool concept using the stacking mechanism on Stacks. So what I love is that for the first time, like my cousin in Turkey, he's 22 years old, didn't go to college, he's doing stuff with Bitcoin, and it doesn't matter who he is. He doesn't need anyone's permission or approval. Like Bitcoin doesn't care who you are, and I think it's very important in the world we live in today for people to have access to this because it's super powerful. It's incredibly important, and I think this is actually going to be the biggest battle of our lifetime is the battle against totalitarianism and authoritarianism, which is happening right here in this country with the Earn It bill and all of these efforts to remove our ability to use end-to-end encryption and communication tools. Our financial privacy is being rapidly eroded. We don't think about it, we don't talk about it because we're being distracted by all of the identity politics, but it's happening right here. And so it's really important that Bitcoin exists, that we continue to defend Bitcoin, and that we build products and tools that maintain the central ethos of Bitcoin, which is permissionless. That's it.
You know, on that.
That's it. Like, it's super simple.